Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Indy's Trusted Servant Show on InspireSmall.biz. What's Indy's Trusted Servant? Excuse me. Well, that's me, Danny O'Malia. I'm Indy's Trusted Servant. I do customer service training and keynote speaking about customer service and, more importantly, organizational culture, which leads to good or bad customer service. Everybody has a culture. I learned all of that from the hand of the master, my late father, Joe O'Malia, back in the O'Malia Food Market days. But even before that, when I was about 9 and 10 years old and my dad owned a little store in Broad Ripple where the Vanguard Bar is today, it had one cash register and 6 employees, and one of them was a 9 and 10-year-old kid. My dad lost that store, and 10 years later, he successfully launched O'Malia Food Markets with ultimately 9 stores and almost 1,000 employees. And one of the things I learned from my dad was never, ever, ever give up. If you're interested in my customer service keynoting or training for your staff, give me a call at 317-413-9062. Now, what's the Indy's Trusted Servant Show on InspireSmall.biz? I like to describe it as lively local small biz and community talk where you can feel the pulse of Indy. And today my guest is a longtime friend from church league softball, from our baseball trips, and so on and so forth, and someone who's had me keynote for the Indiana Railroad Corp a long time ago, Larry Kaelin. And Larry has been with the Indiana Railroad Corp for a long time, and we're going to talk about the Railroad Corp and the railroad business. But before that, Larry, tell our viewers about Larry Kaelin, where you grew up, where you went to school, where you studied, what you studied, and how you got with the Railroad Corp.
Well, I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and from there I went to St. Louis. I went to St. Louis University and graduated from St. Louis University.
He's a Billiken.
Yes. And after getting out of school, I went to work for Peabody Coal Company in St. Louis and worked there for several years, and then ended up with a coal exporting company, Marine Coal Sales, in Indianapolis, and I moved here in 1981.
With that company?
To join that company.
Okay.
Yeah, from Peabody Coal. And we exported coal to Europe, to Rotterdam, and to Spain, and Turkey, and loaded about 175 vessels over about a 10-year period. After leaving that, I ended up working for the Indiana Railroad, started there in 2002, and been working there ever since, and basically handled all the energy demand for Indiana Railroad, and handled all the coal going into power plants that generate the electricity that powers Indiana. And since that time, I've picked up all the other business, which is import containers from the Far East, and also all the manifest business for Marathon Oil, and we bring all the sugar in for the Heath bars in Robinson, Illinois.
There you go, the Heath bars.
And a lot of plastics that goes into everyday life. So
tell folks really quickly about your family. His lovely wife, Colleen, was a member of the O'Malia Food Market Focus Group for a whole year back in the day. Mm-hmm. And so we know the Kaelins very well, but tell the folks real quickly about Colleen and your family.
Well, Colleen, I met Colleen at Peabody Coal Company, and she used to work for me, and now I work for her. And that's the way it's been going for about 45 years. And we have 4 children, three girls and 1 boy, and we have 10 and a half grandchildren at this point in time.
You're going to go 3 grandchildren up on me pretty soon, right?
Right.
Good for you.
Right.
Okay, so talk about the Indiana Railroad Corp and its history, and where you transport stuff to and from.
Well, the Indiana Railroad was spawned in 1986, and it was after the Staggers Act was passed, where they deregulated railroads. And so basically the large railroads, which they call the Class 1 railroads, would be CSX, Norfolk Southern, Union Pacific, and Burlington Northern Santa Fe, they like to move from, say, Chicago to New York or Chicago to LA. And the first mile and the last mile, they weren't very good at, and that's why a lot of them went bankrupt. And so the short line industry was spawned, after the Staggers Act deregulated it, and now there's 500 class or short line railroads, which Indiana Railroad falls into.
Is a short line railroad. Now, why were the big boys not good at the leaving and but they were good in between?
Well, they were they wanted to go hundreds of miles and not 2 miles.
Okay, they didn't want to do the short.
They didn't want to do this, right?
Okay.
They didn't want to provide the customer service that your dad provided.
Not many people do.
They didn't want to take the groceries to the car. I mean, that's
there you go.
That's basically the deal.
There you go.
So the short line group started there, and the gentleman by the name of Tom Holback bought a beat down old Illinois Central railroad that went from Sullivan, Indiana to Indianapolis, Indiana, and got it rebuilt and took it from a rundown railroad to a class. A first-class railroad that's running a 286 gross weight across the railroad, and is able to move about 150 cars and containers, which takes that all off the roads.
Yeah, and that's one of the big things about railroads that are good. Mm-hmm. Illinois Central, is that the same Illinois Central as in the Arlo Guthrie song, City of New Orleans?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the same one.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
2002 is when Tom Holback brought...
1986.
1986.
He bought it in
2002 you came.
I came in 2002.
Okay, so where do you run from and to?
We run from Indianapolis, Indiana, through Sullivan, up through Terre Haute to Chicago.
Okay.
And Chicago is the largest rail terminal in the world.
Now, do you go from Terre Haute, Sullivan to Chicago, or do you go from Indy to Chicago?
We go Indy to Bloomington, to Linton, to Jasonville, Indiana, to Terre Haute, to Chicago.
So you don't run Indy to Chicago. You run over there and then up to Chicago.
That's right.
And that's the whole thing, right?
No, that's just part of it.
That's part of it.
The other part of it goes, once we get to Sullivan, we go straight west for another 56 miles to a little town called Newton, Illinois, which is about 22 miles east of Effingham. And that's where all of our intermodal containers come from, which is another part of our business that we started about 8 years ago.
So I can remember talking to you about this before, because Larry you did the radio show a long time ago,
right,
did you
right,
not?
Right.
It seems to me like that then other short, what do you call them? Short line railroads might pick it up from there.
Or class ones, like
or a class one.
Basically, our Chicago connection, everything goes to a class one. We'll go to all the class ones are in Chicago. So, like, we're bringing soda ash out of Wyoming, out of the Green River Valley, southwestern Wyoming, that's coming in for SO3 emission control in coal plants, and it comes on the Union Pacific through Promissory Point, which was
the famous railroad,
connection to the east and the west.
Yeah.
Comes from that area to Chicago. We get it in Chicago, and then we have a transload in the Sullivan area that we offload it into trucks and deliver it to all the power plants in Indiana.
Then you bring some to Indianapolis, right?
And then we also have soda ash coming to Indianapolis that goes to a company that, basically soda ash is a alkaline that, basically is used to make the pH of the water back to a base.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're doing some good stuff from the environment on this on this end.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of people don't like coal, but
yeah,
you're making it cleaner.
Coal is 99% clean, and we probably have to have a whole new segment when we talk about coal versus windmills and solar, and the density of those.
Yeah.
fuels.
Would you have any idea how many trucks the railroads keep off the roads?
About 800 to 1,000 trucks.
In Indiana?
In Indiana.
In Indiana.
Right.
If you can picture 800 to 1,000 more trucks, I drive to Cincinnati.
800,000 to 1 million trucks.
To 1 million trucks in Indiana.
Right.
So if you can picture that, I drive to Cincinnati a lot.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of trucks on the road as there is. And they're good. They're good. But boy, I can't imagine 800 to a million more trucks on the road in Indiana. So that's one of the unseen
Right.
things about the railroad business, right?
Right. And especially the containers, because this new intermodal business that we have put together, we're picking up 40 and 20 foot international containers in Vancouver and Prince Rupert, British Columbia, and we bring those, instead of those going to Chicago and coming down I-65, they come to Chicago, they go to Effingham, and then at Newton, about 22 miles to the east, we interchange and we bring all that via rail into Indianapolis.
And then on to other short line railroads?
No, it gets deramped in Indianapolis. And
Okay,
it goes
okay.
on a truck and it delivers to Cummins, Target, you name it.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Lane Bryant. We move a lot of Lane Bryant stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lane Bryant, that's in South?
No, they have a warehouse, right in downtown.
Right on Southeastern Avenue.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah. Fascinating stuff. So we can't talk about, I had Larry committed to the interview before the East Palestine thing, or East Palestine, or however you say it, but I have to ask you about that. First of all, what do you think caused it?
Well, I mean, if you look at the video that's been on TV and all that kind of stuff, it looks like there's, a car that had some wheel issues that created, some kind of derailment. But, the FRA is going to completely investigate that, and I wouldn't want to.
What's the FRA?
The Federal Railroad Administration.
Federal Railroad Administration.
So I wouldn't want to, there's a lot of investigation going there, but when you see the fire, coming
that's
from
what
underneath the car.
That's your assumption, or that's
Right.
your opinion of why it happened.
Yeah.
So you were talking off air about the fact that they have what they call them hot boxes to measure the heat on the wheels and stuff.
Right.
On the railroads now.
Right.
You think the federal government is likely to mandate more hot boxes?
There's discussion along those lines.
And that would raise the cost of doing business for the railroads, which of course would raise the cost of everything.
Right.
That's how that works, right?
Right.
So that's obviously in your industry, that I'm sure that's a big topic of conversation.
Very much.
So how many people does the Indiana Railroad Corp employ?
We're about 130.
And they're not all in Indianapolis. Some
No.
of them in Chicago, some of them are over by Sullivan and so forth.
Most of them are in the center of our railroad is in Jasonville, Indiana, excuse me.
Okay.
Which is about 30 miles south of Terre Haute, and we have a lot there. We have in Indianapolis and then in Newton, Illinois.
What exactly is your job with the Indiana Railroad Corp?
I am the vice president of business development.
So your job is to go out and get more business.
That's right. Right.
How do you do that?
Well, we do a lot of networking, but the thing that I think is the most important for us is that we have a philosophy that we do what we say we're going to do. We treat people the way they want to be treated, and we return phone calls.
That's a good one, and that all goes back to bringing me in so many years ago, and make sure we keep doing that. Lost art returning phone calls, right?
Right.
Very, very irritating.
Well, and I took a page out of your book, and all phone calls get returned within 24 hours, and really I try to take the phone calls as much as I can when they come in.
Right.
But I think when people, and which at the end of the day, that allows you to have trust and access.
And it's what others aren't doing.
Yes. Yes, I would say that.
Absolutely.
In a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Not in all cases, but in some cases.
So do some of these employees, are they on the trains? Are they engineers, conductors?
Yes. Right, yes.
That's some of the employees.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
What other kind of employees do you have?
Well, we have...
You have track maintenance people?
Yep. We have track maintenance, and, they make sure that the track is correct, and, we have geometry cars that go across it to x-ray it to make sure that there's no defects that you can't see. We just got a new machine that figures out the gauge, that the gauge is the right gauge.
Okay.
And it's a truck that pushes out to make sure that you find any weak spots where, the plates, the rail is not, you got defective ties or the rail is, has a possibility of failure.
To get back to the politics for just a minute, our Pete Buttigieg said something like there are 1,000 derailments a year.
Yeah.
Is that a correct number?
Yeah, I think so.
But we don't hear about them.
No.
They're
no.
minor,
Absolutely.
usually, right?
Right. Yes, that's correct. And there's and that, that's reported. If you have something that's minor,
it might not get reported.
When they say that it's 1,000, I think the FRA has a threshold of how much it has to be before it's reported. Right.
Now you don't do any passenger trains.
No.
It's just strictly product, right?
That's a very expensive proposition doing passenger trains.
Yeah. So Hoback, is he still doing his, the hobby with the
model
passenger?
hair?
Yeah.
Incredible. Just incredible. I was over there the other day, and it's just his dad. He has his setup that's the size of your
Hoback's
room.
the president, right?
The old president. No, he's
retired.
He's retired. He retired in 2015, 16. But he has a model train set that's probably twice the size of this room.
Wow.
And it is a replica of the yard in Chillicothe, Illinois. I mean, to the point of, he's bought, corn stalks, 1,000 corn stalks, about 2 inches high. And he's also got the walls painted where the actual model train set gives you a view looking
what it would be if you were there.
If you were going by.
Wow. Does he live in Indianapolis?
Oh, he lives in Zionsville.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
We'll have to get you out there. As a
Yeah.
matter of fact, I'm having lunch with him or breakfast with him next week, and I'm going to tell him that you want to come out and see it.
I would love to come out and see that.
He's to go into the controls. He has a drawbridge. Did you go into the controls that you can go inside and control it? He has a drawbridge that you go under, and the drawbridge comes back down.
I got to see that.
I can do that.
That's fantastic. Doggone, I had another thing that I wanted to talk about, and now I'm forgetting what it was. Oh, back to the employees. How bad has the turnover been, or how much trouble have you had hiring new employees? With the COVID and everything else.
It's we were struggling. We've hired a bunch. We've hired about 10. We've increased our workforce, or hired 10% more people.
Now, why 10% more?
Because first of all, business, and during COVID we weren't hiring anybody, and so we needed people.
Yeah.
But here's the problem. Here's the issue with our situation is it takes about a year for somebody to be qualified to go out on the railroad, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But it takes a year. So if you're short, you don't go to Manpower and pick people up.
Right.
And that's
finding that qualified person, or somebody that's teachable,
that wants to do it, and you can make $80,000-$90,000 a year with about a high school education.
Well, you know what, and that's a great point. All this, you hear this all the time. Does everybody need to go to 4-year college anymore?
Absolutely,
especially if they're studying something that's kind of goofy.
Yeah,
wouldn't they be better off to learn to be a plumber or an electrician or whatever? But then there's all these businesses like yours. Mm-hmm. The grocery business was the same way. I mean, we had store managers and meat managers that were high school graduates that sent 4 kids to college working for us.
Sure.
Back in the day.
Right.
So there's all this underappreciated business, all these underappreciated businesses as far as stature is concerned.
Right.
But that you can really do a lot of good for the country and the people, but you can always also make a pretty good living.
Oh, absolutely.
So are you guys looking to hire people?
Absolutely.
How should somebody go about applying? You got a website or something?
Yeah, we got a website.
Fire it up. Tell folks what it is.
I think it's just IndianaRailroad.com, but we'll get that.
Okay, we IndianaRailroad.com.
Yeah.
I know what I was going to mention. Goes back to taking the trucks off the road. And this,
right.
I think we talked about this a long time ago. I was driving with some buddies to Salt Lake City for an NCAA tournament game.
Yeah.
And you mentioned I-80, right?
Yeah.
Now, this was 2006, and I'd never thought about the railroads much.
Uh-huh.
But as we drove out, and the railroad tracks are parallel with I-80, and we go, I can't believe how many trains there are.
Coal trains. A lot of coal trains.
Probably, but my point was, look at all that business being done.
Oh, yeah.
Right on the railroads, and again, taking the trucks off the road. I mean, it was almost constant. We wouldn't go 10 minutes without another train coming by,
Right.
and we were stunned by that.
Well, at one point in time, there was 1 million tons a day, 1 million tons a day being loaded and transported out of Wyoming that was coming east.
And what was that? Coal?
Coal.
It was coal.
Just coal.
Yeah. Okay.
Triple tracked. The website is www.inrd.com.
So, if you're looking for a good career and you're a worker and you're willing to learn,
Yes.
go to that website. There's some jobs available, right?
Correct.
So we just got a couple of minutes left. What else can we talk about?
I think when you take the trucks off the road, I mean, the environmental impact on that's dramatic. It's about 4 trucks per car. So that makes a big difference.
Which also, by the way, helps on the maintenance of the interstates.
Absolutely.
So fewer chuck holes, potholes, whatever you want to call them, and it preserves our streets and our roads and our interstates. Again, there's so much more to a business like a railroad that people don't think about.
Right. And the thing about it is the majority of the money is all private money. It's not taxable money, and the roads. When the roads get out of shape,
then your taxes are going to go up.
Then their taxes are going to go up. So I think that's the thing. And the other thing is when you're moving hazardous material, do you want it on a track where you know where it is, or do you want it on a truck that can go anywhere? I mean, that's the other thing about moving hazardous material, whether it's anhydrous ammonia or anything that acid or any of that kind of stuff. I mean, do you want it on a railroad where you know where it's going to be, and there's a positive handoff when you do that kind of stuff?
Right, and you measure the where it's going to be. You know where it is at any point in time.
That's right. That's right. Right. So I think that's a very big positive for security and all that kind of stuff.
And another thing about the trucks, and again, not down in the trucks because they're important too.
No, absolutely.
But, they're driven by individuals who have to pull off at rest stops and sleep.
Right.
Whereas the train takes it right on through there.
Well, but we also have hours of service too.
You do. Yes. like airline pilots. Kinda.
Right. And like they're trying to initiate with the trucks too. But the thing is we can move 14,000 tons of freight with 2 people. So 14.
Just 2 people on the train.
2 people on the
conductor
train.
and the engineer.
That's right.
Pretty much.
14,000 tons of freight. So let's round numbers. That's about 500 trucks.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Right. Well, I mean, if it's it's 100 cars, and it's 120 cars. So it's about 500 trucks that would take to move that same amount.
Again, the amount of stuff that people don't understand about businesses is amazing. And I think I've interviewed you before, and we've probably talked about this before, but I always learn something new. And what it saves on the highways, is just amazing. But between the trains and the truckers, America keeps moving. And
got to have them both.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, my dad was a trucker.
Oh, was he?
Right.
Over the road trucker?
Well, he was in the trucking business.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was in the trucking business.
Well, Larry Kaelin with the Indiana Railroad Corp. Thanks for being my guest today. Give us that website one more time in case anybody's looking for a good job.
www.inrd.com.
Great having you, Larry. Next week, our guest will be my friend John DeLucia, who dubs himself the Hoosier Banker. He's with Citizens State Bank, also another client of Indy's Trusted Servant.
Right.
So tune in next week. Larry, see you soon because we got a baseball trip to go on.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.